Buddy, and we have our next, and I've got to say it, real deal experts on the call. We have Mary Kate Gulick. Now, I got to tell you, I found Mary Kate a couple of short months ago on another summit, a Pinterest summit, a Pin Potential Summit, I think it was called. And I started to follow her, and I had no real interest in Pinterest. I actually don't know why I got onto it, because by the end of it, I was so overwhelmed by all the things. I think you needed to be an expert to already be on the summit. And I was like, oh my God, another thing that I can't do because it's so overwhelming and so big. And then Kate's book came out, and she wrote a book called The Real Deal Expert. And literally on the second page, Kate, permission, may I just read a little clip? Just a little excerpt.
Oh my, sure, if you'd like.
Okay, so Kate talks about fake gurus versus real deal experts. And she says, when I talk about fake gurus, I'm specifically referencing people who woke up one sunny day and decided they wanted to make money online without doing a ton of work. So they signed up for a class on Instagram monetization, or became a ClickFunnels affiliate, or joined the Law of Attraction Facebook group, and then immediately started calling themselves an Instagram success coach or funnel expert or life coach. All of this with no credentials, no experience, and no genuine expertise. Their goal was to repurpose the content they learned in a course or from an affiliate, pass it off on their own, and make bank from unsuspecting consumers and entrepreneurs who wished for real life transformation. And why this resonated for me was because I call my clients advanced beginners. They're new coaches. They are new coaches, but they are not new to the world. They are not freshmen straight out of college. There's life experience. There is something that's happened that has called them to do the work, right? So in Kate's instance, Kate's a content marketing coach, and she helps those leaving the corporate or clinical space to start their own business and turn their nerd zones into compelling content. I love that, nerd zones. Into compelling.
That's what it is.
I'm an absolute nerd. Into compelling content that establishes their authority with a new online audience. Kate's topic is about literally establishing your authority through content. So welcome, Kate. I know that you have had a heck of a week. Guys, Kate's whole family has just been through COVID. I know you said your hubby was in hospital. I'm so sorry that you had such a rough week, but thank you for showing up.
It's all good. And I'm thrilled to be here, Jay. Thank you for having me. And you guys know, when you have a nerd zone that you're deep into, there is literally nothing in the world that you would rather do than talk about your thing. So this is my thing. Can I just tell you, I love advanced beginners. I think that's a brilliant way to put it. I think one of the things so many of the people I work with are coming out of like 15, 20, 25 years of corporate life. And they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know what you're doing? And literally, no one knows what you're doing. No one knows this better than you. But it's this idea that because they're taking it out of that corporate context and into the new space, that suddenly it's like, well, I'm not an expert anymore. It's like, no, friend. You still have volumes of information that no one else could ever get. No one could ever learn as much as you know. You forget more about this than I know in a given day. What we're learning, what we're beginners at, is how to translate that goodness into something that's compelling online. And that's when I talk about the fake gurus. These are people who are real good at social media marketing. That's what they're experts in. They're experts in social media marketing. Whatever it is they're trying to sell, they're not necessarily experts in that, but you're experts in what you're an expert in. So let's talk about how to translate that and really showcase that expertise in a way that matters and resonates.
Absolutely. And you know what? You can get away, Kate, am I right? You can get away with just being great at digital marketing or great at content marketing if you're just selling pencils, or you're selling an energy drink. Then absolutely, you don't need expertise. You can just be. But as a coach, when you are impacting people's lives, when they are laying down big bucks, and if they should be laying down good money, hard-earned cash, to have you impact their lives or their business or their relationships or their whatever, fill in the blank, you have no right to be showing up purely as a great marketer. You have no right.
Mm-hmm.
you absolutely have a right to speak up and show up.
That's a fact. And if you're, you're coming into your own business having developed all of this hard-earned knowledge, you owe it to the world to give what you know and to share what you know. And the world owes you compensation for what you've built, the kind of knowledge that you've built. So that's what I really focus on, and what I want to talk about is, the best way to claim that expert status through your content and to make that happen. Jay, is it okay if I share screen, because there's a couple models and things? Does that work? Okay, cool. I don't want to mess with the aesthetic of the whole thing, so I'm going to share screen really quickly. Let me know when it's coming up.
It's coming
Excellent. Okay. So I always call this presentation Expert Status Unlocked, because I always feel like when we're talking to people who are coming out of a corporate space or a clinical space, that we're almost playing a game, like, so much already. Like, this is just one little achievement you've got to nail down. And it's not just the how. We're going to talk through some strategies today, and they're really solid strategies, but it is never just about the how. And I always put the disclaimer out there. You are asking something of yourself. You're saying, I need to show up in a way that I've never showed up before. I have a whole group of people that I've been working with for years, sometimes decades, who understand that I am the go-to person on this. But now I'm looking to step out of that context into a new context of people who don't know me, who don't know what I do, who don't have my history, and who haven't seen me do it over and over again. So how do I prove myself without actually working with them? And that is a scary thing, to step into that new context. But showing up is half the battle. It's not all the battle, it's half the battle. So if we make the commitment to show up, that's one thing. So let's talk about what to do when we show up, and how to basically step up and claim that expert status so that people recognize you as the go-to expert in your field. So a little bit about me. Hate talking about myself, but I'll do it because it's required. I am a content marketing coach, as Jay says. I've been doing content marketing for 20 years, so a really long time. And I'm a certified content marketer. I've won a lot of awards. It's all really fun. I like trophies, and I like winning things. My area of expertise is really focusing on professional services, coaches and consultants, people who have done the work in the corporate, clinical, or academic setting and are now looking to translate that know-how. And then I am best-selling author of that book that Jay read one of my favorite passages from. So that is me in a nutshell, but we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you. So today we're going to go through how to determine the content that you should be producing. When I talk to clients, they all say the same thing. I don't know what to post. What am I supposed to post? What am I supposed to put out there? First of all, I will posit that that is not true. You do know what to post. You know what you are an expert in. You have to stick to your topics. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And make sure that you always know what to post, and that you're never having to ask that question of yourself again. And we're going to talk about the simplest, most focused, most sustainable way to create a volume of content over the course of 12 to 18 months, so that you're not having to constantly reinvent things. And then most importantly, making sure that the content of your content actually does something, right? Make sure that the right people see it and it compels the right people to action so that they want to work with you. So that's what we're going to go through today. This is what I ask of you. Always a two-way street. Focus. Stay with me. We won't be long, but we're going to get into some good stuff that's going to change the way that you think about your content, and hopefully make it a lot easier to think about how to create a full ecosystem to get to that expert status quicker than you would get there without it. And that's really our goal. So just be with me as we go through this. So I ask you to do a little bit of an audit, and please feel free to ping me in the chat. How are you currently approaching your content right now? You're just kind of coming into the business and you're getting started. You're all about making a smart start. Are you not doing any content? Are you not putting anything out there? Are you posting some content, but there's no real strategy behind it? Or are you just like constantly posting, but also with no real strategy behind it? Or do you have a written strategy? And maybe you're not sticking to it. I'd be super interested to know how you are approaching it, and just want you to think about that a little bit and kind of orient yourself as we kind of get into it. Um, when we talk about content that positions you as an expert, that content is very high in four things. Value, meaning that when your ideal client uses it, it's something that they can actually do something with, that it's very relevant to them, that it's really dialed into who they are, what their problems are, and what they're dealing with. That it's high in quality. I feel like a school teacher saying this, but you cannot be recognized as an expert if what you put out in the world is sloppy, grammatically incorrect, and just poor in quality. Does that mean that it has to follow English, school book grammar all the time? Certainly not. But I always say that you walk the line between schoolroom grammar and functional illiteracy, right? So you want to be like right in the middle. You want to write like people talk. And of course, you want to write like you talk, but it has to be high in quality. And finally, the part that scares the bejesus out of most people, you have to have a high volume. If you want to be recognized as an expert, then what you put out there needs to be, I'm not going to say everywhere because it doesn't need to be everywhere, but there needs to be a lot of it. So what we want to talk about is how to get, first, we're going to talk about that value, the value and relevance, and how to get there by getting to know your client better. And then we're going to talk about getting to that level of quality and volume quickly, and how we can automate that process to an extent. Okay. So talking about that value and relevance, this is the part that people like to skip a lot, and I really encourage them not to. Let's not just go out and start producing content just for the sake of it. Let's actually find out what your expert sweet spot is. What is the high value and relevant content that you can offer, that you can uniquely offer, that will really connect with people? So when we start thinking about the sweet spot, I always like to pull in this idea from Coco Chanel. In order to be irreplaceable, one must always be different. A lot of times when we get into a coaching or consulting space, we look to people who have already been established and really start trying to emulate their style and emulate their words, and emulate their offerings. We can learn a lot from them, I think, but what we see a lot is that we get a lot of little clones out there. And if you are not providing some unique value, why do you exist? So your nerd zone is special and it's different than everybody else's, and the way that you approach it is different from everyone else's. So let's make sure that we're honoring that. So when I talk about the sweet spot, the three things that we're going to look at, we're going to look at you and your unique value. Obviously, that's very important. So figuring out your sweet spot. It's not the most important thing though, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The other thing that we'll look at is differentiation. So we'll look at your competitors and what they're doing. But that's also not the most important thing. The most important thing is this: what do your ideal clients care about? What is on their mind? What is the thing that is keeping them up at night and weighing them down? When we find the overlap between two, or if we find three, then I'll jump up and down for joy. But if we find the overlap of two of those things, then we're on to something. So let's talk about how to figure those things out. So what you're looking at here is, this is a worksheet for one of my courses, and I always go through this with a client to talk about uncovering your unique content proposition. Think about what it is that you offer, and I ask that people kind of start making an inventory. What are the table stakes, the differentiators, and the game changers? When I talk about table stakes, really it's, if you are a life coach, you offer life coaching packages. If you don't offer life coaching, you're not a life coach. That table stakes, right? But nothing is very unique or interesting simply about the offering of life coaching. Differentiators, if you're a life coach, for example, perhaps you offer a special workshop for 6 to 12 women, where you talk specifically about making decisions at a career crossroads in your 40s. It's very specific to a niche. It's something that's a little bit unique, that's different, that not everyone offers, that would appeal to a very specific audience. That could be a differentiator. Or perhaps one of your offerings is about, for people who are executive leaders, and they're really challenging themselves to get to that next level, and they've been able to kind of hit this very high managerial level, and they want to hit that visionary level and they just can't get there, and you work specifically with them with a very specific package to get them there within, you know, a 6-month period of time, whatever. That's more of a differentiator. When I talk about game changers, these are the big differences that really have the potential to become your signature offering. For example, there is a business coach in the middle of Iowa, really in the middle of nowhere. And what she has become famous for is that she runs a summer camp every year for women entrepreneurs. You go and you canoe and you eat s'mores and you do archery and you get business training for 3 days while you're there. It's amazing. So that is a game changer. Yes, she offers all of the other table stake stuff, but that has become the thing that she is known for, that women from all over the world go to Iowa to go to camp for, you know, for 3 days. Or there's another business coach in Australia who, you know, she realized that many of the women she worked with couldn't get past this point because they were so resistant to delegating work. So she was like, fine, I am going to start a VA company and I'm going to train them in all the things that you know, and you can work with my VAs. And that became a significant game changer for her. So differentiators are just kind of how you niche out and how you say, you know, I'm not like every other coach, but a game changer is something that has the potential to really define your business, as well as your content. It's okay if you don't have a game changer. That's something that you come to as you get to know what's more relevant to your audience. But this is just a way that I ask people to start thinking about what they do. Now, your competitor review. Getting to know how you can be different means you have to know something about your competitors. I always put a cap around this of 90 minutes max, because I will tell you there is something that is inherently impossible about stopping once you get started on this. It is a rabbit hole, people, because we love to compare ourselves to other people, even though we hate to compare ourselves to other people. So set yourself a 90-minute timer and do not go beyond the 90 minutes. And your job is to look at your known competitors and discover a couple unknown competitors and look at them. And you're running them through a very specific set of questions. You don't need to know everything about them. There are some key things that you need to know about them that matter. You need to know, what are they offering? Obviously, they're going to offer coaching packages. What do those packages look like? What do they focus on? Is it a specific niche? Is it a specific life stage? What are they thinking about? What's their messaging angle? This, more than anything else in the coaching space, becomes the key differentiator, right? You have people who come to the space who are very, you know, highly professional, very polished, and all about, you know, achievement and winning. And then you have other people who are much softer and more organic, who are all about joy. And so the messaging angle is the thing that you want to take note of as well. What content do they have available? Do they have a book? Do they have a course? Do they have a podcast? What are their kind of key content experiences in the world? Do you need to create all of them as well? No, it's just a good thing to know. And then, most importantly, tone and personality. How are they showing up in the world? How are people relating to them? What kind of people would they attract? Are they attracting the kind of people that you would want to attract? Maybe, maybe not. But tone and personality is a big important thing. These are the 5 things I want you to look at, and they're the only 5 things I want you to look at with your competitors. You can go down the rabbit hole forever, but these are the things that you care about. Now, when it comes to those unknown competitors, start Googling some of your differentiators. If you do coaching specifically for executive women in their 40s and 50s, find out who else is doing that particular service. If you have a summer camp for, you know, for business, not that you would, but if you offer very specific things for female tech startups, or if you're offering a specific kind of bookkeeping for very particular kind of businesses, for maritime lawyers, then find out who else is in that space that you didn't know about and run them through the same known competitor analysis. 90 minutes max. So, so take quick note of that. And then we get into what I consider is most important. And this is, what do your prospects want? What do they care about? This is how you determine what's going to be of value to them and what's going to be highly relevant to them. So a couple ways to do this. Oh, sorry. There we go. What are they searching for? Now, I'm going to pop out of this really quick and show you one of my favorite tools in the whole wide world. Um, Answer the Public, you may or may not be familiar with it. But let's say, for example, that I'm an executive coach. So I'm going to look up executive coaching, see what people are searching for about it. Now, what this is going to give me is all of these questions. What, why, when, how, who about executive coaching. And the darker the circle is, the more search volume there is behind this. Why is executive coaching important? How does executive coaching work? This is essentially giving you headlines for content, for blog posts, for podcast episode. Who needs executive coaching? What is executive coaching? How can executive coaching help? And the further you go down, the deeper you get into executive coaching for entrepreneurs, very high search volume. Why it's beneficial because um, this I love executive coaching with backbone and heart. People are actually searching that term. So this is a great place to go for ideas, and it lets you know, people are really searching for this. They're not necessarily searching for X. So that gives you some good ideas. Um, Another tool that I love is SEM Rush. And this one is paid, but you can get a free trial. So I'm a big proponent of really commit to doing your search, your research, and then finding doing it within that 7-day window so that you can get the free trial. So I always go into the keyword magic tool, and let's say that I am going to become an equine therapist. So what are people searching for around equine therapy? So let's look. And this one gives me specific volume. Um, equine therapy, salary, I don't care about that. How to become an equine therapist, whatever. But then we get into, what I'm more interested in is if we get into these questions. What do people have questions about? Um, let's see. How much does an equine therapy make? Whatever. But how much does equine therapy cost? Or I've seen a lot of them around, does insurance cover equine therapy? So that kind of creates this idea of things that you can write about. So those are a couple of my favorite tools. I also really like BuzzSumo, which will tell you, so if I'm all about equine therapy, I want to know where people are finding their information about equine therapy. So what BuzzSumo will tell me, it tells me the most popular spots on the internet where people are getting information about equine therapy. And as it happens, it's a very kind of timely thing. There was a bill passed in Kentucky, I think, about equine therapy. And so there was a lot of news about that. But if I look at something like executive coaching, then what it's going to bring me to is, oh, there's very specific education and other coaches who are getting the most volume. So if these guys are getting the most volume, then I might want to take a peek at them and see what they're doing. Do I want to copy what they're doing? Certainly not, but I want to see what they're up to because I want to know. So that's the first thing, is what are they searching? Now, a lot of people will tell you that this is an exact science and that it is that you'll go and you will get, these tools will give you the exact perfect thing that you should be focusing on. No, it will not. It is an art more than a science still, even though it's all backed by, quantifiable data. What it will give you is it will give you ideas and a sense of what is most important to your audience. And that is where you start. And you take that, and knowing what kind of content they're consuming, that clarifies that picture a little bit. And then, of course, hey, ask your clients why they chose you. If you're already working with people, ask them, why me? Why didn't you work with somebody else? What was it about me that attracted you? And get out there into the Facebook groups where your audience is hanging out, and spy on them. What are they talking about? What are their concerns? What are the things that they care about the most? And ask them there. You won't find a better way of knowing than actually looking at what people are doing and looking at what they're talking about. Now, again, rabbit hole for sure. But it's important to spend time on. And the truth is, you never really stop figuring out what it is that your prospects want. So just be prepared for that. So now that we know what's happening with our competitors, what our prospective clients care about the most, and what we are bringing to the table, let's map out the sweet spot for our content. So we have your differentiators and your game changers. We have competitive white space, and I call that white space. This is, what are no competitors really doing, either with content or with tone, and then what your prospects care about. So first thing, what do we have here? If you find a space where your differentiators and your overlap well with your competitive white space, but your prospects don't actually care about it, I think you've just stumbled upon something that is irrelevant. Um, Nobody's talking about it for a reason. And the reason is because you can't find any evidence that your prospects care about it. So it's time to rethink that. Um, if you find something that no one is talking about, but your prospects really care about, but you don't have that as a part of your offering, that's really worth a look. And that's not necessarily just a content statement. That's a business model statement. But in your research, if you're like, hey, nobody's talking about this on as far as offerings, but in the groups and the search data is all telling me that people are really interested in this, that's something worth looking at. This spot in the middle here, I will tell you right now, if you start looking around and you find something that aligns perfectly with your nerd zone and your offering that nobody else is talking about in the competitive space and that your prospects care about deeply, please call me and I will come over and make you a steak or an Impossible Burger or something, because it almost never happens. And when it does, like, I want to be part of that celebration because that's kind of a unicorn moment. What you're most likely to experience is something that is really important to your prospects, and it's something that aligns with what you know well, and that's your sweet spot. That's where you want to be focusing all of your content effort. So take that knowledge. For me, this was really, I'll give you a couple examples. For me, this was, I was very focused on, I've worked with a lot of financial advisors over the years. Obviously I do marketing, and for me, what became the sweet spot is what people cared about most. What the people I wanted to work with cared about most was figuring out the exact steps to get out into the world that will not have them kind of constantly churning out content. So that is what I focus on. I focus on content repurposing, content strategy, and brand messaging, because those are the things that were most needed. But in focusing on that, I left behind a whole lot of other topics that I know a lot about, but they just weren't relevant to my audience, if that makes sense. So now that we know what we're going to talk about, let's talk about how to turn that into expert level content for you so that you can have the volume and the quality of content to be recognized as an expert. The approach that I over and over again continue going back to, because it works in terms of creating that expertise status, but more than anything, it makes life easier for you while it's happening, is my content goldmine approach. And what a content goldmine is a one and done content piece that can essentially power your content marketing strategy for a year or two. Okay. One big piece that you create that you then mine over and over again so that you are not having to create new content. And what you do put out in the world is focused, consistent, and aligned with what your audience cares about. So let's talk about what this looks like. What a content goldmine could be is an ultimate guide, which is typically a downloadable. Take your nerd zone and take it everything you need to know about my nerd zone, and essentially do a really well-structured brain dump that says, hey, here's proof I'm an expert. It's right here. And it's a great big book. Make that available as a downloadable. It's a little bit deeper than a traditional lead magnet. And here's a little secret. Is everybody going to read all of it when they download it? No. Is that the point of it? Also, no. The point of it is that thud factor really creates essentially undeniable proof that you know a lot about this. And even if they only if they skim it or read a couple chapters, the point has still been made. So that's going to be the case for all of this. More of a how-to ebook, something that's structured more around, 30 days to do this, something that walks people through a specific process or framework. That's another way to do a content goldmine. Or you could do a legit book. This is what I did. The reason I wrote my book isn't because I had a burning desire to write a book. I wrote my book so that I could generate content, high volume, very focused content that was, very keyed into my specific content strategy and what I wanted to be talking about. It's the same reason Marie Forleo wrote her book. It's the same reason Grace Lieber wrote her book. It's the same reason James Wedmore wrote his book. So that is also an option for you. Or an original research report. If this is something that you're kind of used to doing in your corporate world, it might be a little more comfortable. And the truth is, I always talk about from a content marketing perspective, the original research report is kind of like the unicorn. It's got a lot of data in it, which means you can create a lot of visual content around that and infographics and things like that. And when you have original research, you have a really nice way to approach the media and to get put into earned, to get some earned exposure with that, which is great. An online course is also a great content goldmine. And this is something that a lot of you are in the process of building. And once you build one, you can take that and break it down in a million different ways. So some of the possibilities that you could think about, if you already do a seminar, then turn it into a multi-module online course or a webinar series. And then you can automate that experience, market to opt-ins, and then take little bits of that and mine them for other things, which we'll talk about in a second. If you have some good client research, publish an original research report that's about your specific audience and what they're dealing with. Or if you have a unique method, which all of you should have a unique method. I am a stickler for a framework brand. Create the how-to ebook that dives in exactly how to do things your way. What is the thought process you follow? What are the milestones that people need to achieve in order to get the results that you get? And if you have a unique audience, that's the best. Write an ebook that explores their unique challenges, that specifically calls out that audience. I know a financial advisor who only works with basically millennial doctors because they have such unique financial challenges. And that is an incredibly clear and concise audience. So he writes a lot about what, how to get ahead financially as a millennial doctor who is saddled with hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. And he is doing a great job and he has a tremendous following because of it. So why I advocate for a content goldmine approach is because it focuses your story. It takes your nerd zone and it puts it into one place that everything directs back to, and all of the content that's generated from that focuses on the same area. We come back to that idea of volume and quality, right? You need to be putting out content that is specific to your nerd zone, not kind of going off on tangents. So this keeps you focused. The other reason, you get that volume and you get the search juice associated with it, because everything you're putting out into the world is focused on the same area of content. You start to develop what's called domain authority in that area, in that Google and Bing will start recognizing you as someone who is constantly putting out high quality content around that. So when people search for the content, you'll be more likely to be put forward by the search engines. Now, are we writing for search engines? No, we're writing for humans. But the idea of creating consistent content in a high volume, there's a search engine benefit to that as well. And then the reason that I care about the most is just less work. Starting a business is a lot of work. You are not here to be a content producer. Content production is a means to an end. This is a faster, less work, less intense way to do it. Why is it less work? Because the gold mine itself is big enough to mine for a full year so that you don't need to keep coming up with content. You have content, you just need to repurpose it, and we can automate that process. Everything in the gold mine is of value to your prospects. So you know what you're putting out there matters time and time again. And as I've said before, having that big, meaty, thud-worthy content goldmine acts as proof of your expertise, like purely because it exists. And it's one piece. The content goldmine is one piece, so you can outsource it cleanly. If it's not something that you're willing to sit down and spend time doing, it's something that you can outsource that piece and then you have it. And then you can continue to use it forever. So just something to think about. I'm very big into making this less work because starting a business is hard. So here's how the content goldmine process works. And this is the part to pay attention to more than anything. And I'm using one of my clients as an example. Her content goldmine was a book. When she wrote it, this is how we split our content gold mines. You can break them down into gold bars. You can break them down into gold nuggets. Obviously, gold bars are bigger pieces of content. Nuggets are the little things that you sprinkle across the internet. So out of her book, we were able to get 62 blog posts, 12 infographics, 8 webinars, 12 videos, and 16 worksheets. That's about 18 months worth of content, okay? That means she did not have to write a blog post for 18 months. She did not have to produce another infographic. She did not have to come up with another webinar idea. The videos, we shot them all in one batch. We said, okay, which 12 videos do we want to get out of this? Here they are. We will cut and paste this and restructure it into a script. Let's shoot those. And we did it. Did we put them live all at once? No, we scheduled them in advance so that they would go live at specific times, and she never had to think about it again. And then 16 worksheets. The worksheets were already in the book. They were part of the framework, and we pulled them out and used them as lead magnets. So that was 18 months worth of content that she did not have to produce anymore after we produced the gold mine. The nuggets, and okay, a note, a blog is still kind of the backbone of a solid content marketing plan. I consider all of the other stuff on this list, infographics, webinars, videos, worksheets, extra credit, right? Like it's all fun, it's all great. If you did nothing else but copy and paste subsections of your content goldmine and turn them into blog posts, that would be an incredibly solid content marketing plan that would get you good traffic to your website, generate domain authority for you from the search engines, and give you something that you could continually put out on social media to bring people back to you. So just a note there. All of these things lead back to the content goldmine. So in this case, it was an actual book. It wasn't just a downloadable. So it was, go to this blog post. You want to read more about it? Here's the book. You can buy it here. It was all posed to sell the book. It wasn't really about making money though. It was about letting people know that she was an authority in this space, which is exactly what it did. So it pushed back to that content goldmine. Now, when we get into the nuggets, this is just breaking all of it down even further. For each of these, for the content goldmine itself, we had a set of social posts that we made all at once, and that there are 5 of them, and we used them all year round. Every couple of weeks, we would put one of those image posts up. We also, and that went directly to the goldmine, we had image posts for each of the blogs, and then charts that pulled little bits out of the infographics that promoted the infographics. Those videos, we used those on social media to promote the webinars, and we had shortened versions of the videos. It all came from the same content base. And we had image posts that promoted those worksheet downloads as lead magnets, which was great. Those led back to the content gold bars, which led to the content gold mine. It was an always on funnel without having to actually build funnels. You were just producing content from one place. And then of course, email is still a part of this as well. So every month there was an email digest that went to her clients. And in that email digest, she included some of the new blog posts that had gone live. Maybe if there was an infographic that went live, that was included, and it pushed back to the book. Oh, and also she sold her programs in the process. And then single subject emails that would promote specific pieces. And each of those were planned. She didn't want to do a ton of email. So really she ended up doing the monthly digests. And then each week she'd do one single subject email. That was more, it was half value focused, half sales focused. So that is what her program looked like. That's a lot of content. And that content came from producing one thing, a solid content goldmine. Can you see why that is so powerful? And can you see why it's so much less work? It's one source of content. There's no more trying to come up with social posts or blogs. What am I going to write about this week? What am I going to do live about this week? What am I going to think about? You can stop asking yourself that question and start just focusing on your business. All of this leads back to one place, and that is where the magic all happens. And the magic happens here where these lightning bolts are. That's where you collect the email address. Now, you've heard this said before, I'm sure, that, the money is in the list. It's not just the money. Your audience is in the list. You can have a great following on Instagram or on Facebook or on your YouTube channel, but the fact is you don't own that platform. And they can change their terms and conditions at any time. And they have changed their terms and conditions at any time. I remember 6 years ago when you could put a post on your Facebook business page and 25% of your followers would see it. Now it's 1.75% because they changed the algorithm. And if I didn't have an email list, how would I get in touch with my people? It certainly wouldn't be through that business page, right? So making sure that you're always grabbing that email address. For this particular example, it was webinar registrations are where we got the email address, and those worksheet downloads are where we got the email addresses. And of course, in this particular example, this is a different example than the one from before. The content goldmine in this case was a downloadable, so that was a place to get the email address. So that's really what we focus on, is that gate where a prospect can give you an email address. It's a very easy form to set up, but building that list is really a critical piece of action, and making sure that we are pushing people back from the gold nuggets to the gold bars, back to the gold mine, so that we can always collect that address. So what we have ended up creating here is really a content ecosystem out of one piece. And the reason, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, I talk about this over and over. You are not here to be a publisher. That's not your brand of strawberry jam. You are here to create a business based on your expertise. The content is a means to an end. If you build a solid gold mine for yourself, and then if we map out what that looks like, okay, this can become 45 blog posts and, 3 worksheets. Hand that off to a VA and let her copy and paste into your blog, optimize them, and schedule them to go live over the course of a year. If you finish your gold mine, and if we map the stuff out right, you don't need to think about it anymore. And it will cost a whole lot less to have somebody do it for $15 an hour than for you to spend your time doing that. What is your time worth? I mean, coaching is, you should really be spending 80% of your time finding leads and talking to them. That is what you should be doing with your time. You should not be popping into your blog, fiddling with all the code and getting it optimized and putting your custom thumbnails on YouTube. That is not a good use of your time. Find someone else to do that and give them the roadmap to say, look, this is my content gold mine. This is how I want it broken down. Okay, go. And then just watch as your content ecosystem builds itself without your help from that forward. So that's really, that is my approach. And when you're just getting started, when you have a real significant bulk of expertise you want to share, I can't stress enough getting it into that one format. There are so many formats that you can think about doing it. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. But I will say that what people struggle most with is format and structure. So once you get that nailed down, once it's done, you guys, it's done. And then you can use it forever. It's an asset that can drive your business forward forever. So I would love to answer questions. I am just now peeking into the chat. So if there is, anything else you guys would love to ask, I'd be happy to answer.
I forgot to even put anything in the chat. I was just drinking it all in. There was so much information.
It is a lot of information, and there are those key pieces though, knowing what people care about, so what you create is valuable, and then doing it once so that you're not having to do it over and over again, because that's what kills entrepreneurs is all the fiddly stuff that comes down to content creation. Social media has made many entrepreneurs. It has also killed many entrepreneurs because they just get overwhelmed by the sheer tedium of it.
I mean, I always say I don't love social media. I'm a social person. My version of socializing is bring wine. We sit and chat for hours, popping up. And so that was one of my real struggles when I started, Kate. And what I love about this goldmine approach is it's relying on your expertise. So it's not relying on endless selfies and endless, this what my self-care routine looks like when you're a business. I'm not saying don't share your personality, but when you're trying so hard to just generate content, you kind of are bouncing off like a ping pong ball. Like you're bouncing off all these pillars, which doesn't build expertise. And that's where self-doubt comes in. Whereas if you've got this piece that you're talking about now, you've got this one piece, you don't have to have a feeling about it. It's a factual piece. You can simply just go get the stuff out of it. It almost takes out the fear and the doubt part.
That's part of it. And Brene Brown always says you cannot engineer uncertainty out of life. What you're doing. And Christine Marie is on this call, and this is something that she says a lot, is like being an entrepreneur is automatically pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. There is going to be uncertainty, and learning to navigate that is the greatest professional and the greatest personal growth that you can give yourself. So it doesn't, having a content goldmine doesn't completely engineer the uncertainty out of things, but it takes that question away, that niggling little question of, do I have anything worthy to say today, is what it comes down to. You have something worthy to say every day. Let's just say it in advance and then let somebody else push publish on it. And just take that question away, and you can go ahead back to grappling with the bigger questions of entrepreneurship and the more important things that you need to deal with your clients.
So I just want to clarify something that you said. You sort of skimmed over it really quickly, but you said, if it's not something you want to do and you're uncomfortable, you can outsource that piece. So was that you saying, get someone else to write the piece? Like you don't have to write the book. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to, first of all, there are really kind of two schools of thoughts on this. There are people who love to write. There are people who, who've always wanted to write a book, and they're really excited about the possibility, and it's an experience that they want to have. And to them, I say, more power to you. I was kind of one of those as well. And then I don't know, have you guys know, have you ever, strategic coach, I cannot remember his name, but he wrote Who Not How, which is a book that came out this year. And actually, he didn't even write it. He had somebody else write Who Not How. And that is the whole point, that there are the things that you are uniquely qualified to do. There are the things that only you can do. And those are the things that you should be doing. There are other things that are important, but someone else can do those better. And you don't need to figure out how to do it. You can say, hey, you know how to do this thing. I'm giving it to you. Do this. Thank you. You will save yourself. And it took me far too long to learn this, if I'm honest, that yes, I can do things better than anyone else because I know how I want them done, right? You don't need everyone to do things to 100% of your standards. That sounds like blasphemy to a lot of us who are high achievers. If they do it to 80%, that's fine, because you doing it to 100%, you probably cost $550 an hour if you think about, how you should be spending your time and what you do. And if I can find somebody who is $50 an hour who can do that for me, okay, that's a far better use of my time. No, yeah, with a content goldmine specifically, if it's something that you say, I love it conceptually, I love it theoretically, I'm never going to create a thing that big because that is not what I do and it's not who I am. Great, outsource it, because it is just too valuable an asset that can drive your content for years. And if you don't do it, then you're constantly picking away at your time doing those little content tasks over time. And if you can just get the darn thing done and then map out what that looks like in terms of how that becomes blog posts and things like that, then you don't have to ask yourself that question every damn day. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of outsourcing all the things when possible.
And you know what Mary Kate is saying is that not that it's not going to be a huge amount of work to get started and to get it out there, it is, but it's what is going to save you in the long run is where the gold is actually. Because you know what, and something that
Totally.
I have huge conversations. I used to have them with myself. I'm a controller, extreme controller. I hate letting go of any piece of work or business. And it stunted my event and design agency for many years until I realized You're only one person. I only have those 24 hours in a day. And as a coach, I always go back to that. You've got to be an intentional coachpreneur. And you have to ask yourself, as the CEO of your company, as the person who's responsible for generating income, is your, if you think of it of a corporate company, would your MD be the guy who runs out to go buy milk? Because what he costs per hour versus what your tea lady or your little admin assistant or your intern costs per hour. And that's like those things, like creating those YouTube thumbnails and creating those. As the CEO of your coaching company, as the MD, isn't it costing you a lot to be doing that? Like, that's a good question to ask. And a lot of people don't. And it's one of the things I focus on with my clients is no one becomes successful off a to-do list. You can add all this stuff on your to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
Success is not in a to-do list. A success is in getting things done. And that doesn't always mean you. It's your value is doing those things that move the needle in your business.
The funny thing about it, I mean, you are so right, but I feel like particularly for those of us who had, really significant success in corporate life, it is a hard mindset to break because that is what we were rewarded for. We were not rewarded for always successfully and strategically delegating. We were rewarded for frequently the amount of time our butt was in the chair and how late we were online at night and how much, gosh, how did you do it all? How do you do all of this? You're amazing. And so we just got so used to this idea of, yes, I can do everything. I'm good at everything. I can do it all. And nobody can live without me, which was really what it came down to. Because in a corporate environment, your goal is to become so indispensable that no one can do anything without you because then you have job security. Wow, how different is it to start thinking about the idea of, I mean, really look at what you want to make in a month. If you want to be bringing in, $30,000 a month, but when you want to be working 25 hours a week, what's your hourly wage? And is that hourly wage of upwards of $500 worth being spent on making YouTube thumbnails and making little social posts in Canva? I would argue the answer is no, because anyone can do that. It doesn't have to be you. The only thing that you can do is coach the way that you coach. The only thing that you can do is, talk to ideal clients about the transformation that you can create in their life. That's what you can do. And there's a whole other, conversation about larger outsourcing to be had. But when it comes to content, you have to be the one to establish the voice because the voice has to be yours. But you can absolutely, that's the kind of the beauty thing about the gold mine, particularly because there is so much copy and paste involved in the mining it, that your voice comes with it. So when you get that done the first time, and I always say, once it's done, and then you don't have to do it again. But when you can take something from that and turn it into something else, the voice comes with it. So you're not having to teach someone your voice, which is, because that's a really hard thing to teach. So yeah.
I don't want to labor it, but I tend to always labor it because it's something that it just screams to me, this whole thing of that mindset from employee to entrepreneur is that you leave your employee status to become an entrepreneur because you want freedom, time, and
Right.
freedom, right? The big guys in your corporate world have that because they're earning big and they've got the time to take, like Christine, who's just come back online, those pictures of why do you want to do this? What do you love about it? Do you want to take your family to Italy? Do you want, one of the things I wanted was I didn't want a 9 to 5 anymore. I work 4 days a week. I work 3 months a year, 3 weeks a month. Oh, I always take the 4th month off. Is it March, April? I get 2 weeks off because there's the 5 months in 5 weeks in that month. And I take 3.5 months off a year. I did that because that is why I wanted to be in business. I didn't want to be that 9 to 5. So if you're going to keep loading yourself with all the kind of stuff that you're going to do, it's going to suck the joy out of why you did this in the first place. And you're going to become overwhelmed and cranky and burnt out. Because this is what burnout is, guys. If you don't know this, when people go burnout is not from doing too much. It's not. It's absolutely not from doing too much. Because let me tell you now, when you're doing something you love, you find energy for it. But when you are doing things that are sucking the energy out of why you're wanting to do what you're doing, that's what burns you out. You feel exhausted when you're doing things that you don't want to do because you know they're not rewarding, because they're not moving the needle. They're not making your soul take flight, or whatever the case may be. That's where burnout comes from, not from doing too much. It's from doing all the little things that you could outsource for $15 an hour.
Because I feel like the truth is that I want to do a lot. There's a lot of things that I want to do, but things that are really important to me. And it's not necessarily, you're absolutely right. It's not about doing too much. It's about doing the wrong things. The soul sucking, life force killing things that you don't want to do. But gosh darn it, it's so comfortable to tick things off a list because you feel like you achieved something. When things get hard, you retreat. It's hard to go out and sell. It's hard to go out and find new clients. It's scary because it's new. So it's just so easy to retreat to our old little to-do list and tick off the piddly things that don't move the needle and that don't get us anywhere. But we get that little hit of dopamine every time we do it because that's what we're used to.
But you know what you hit the nail on the head now is that we do all those things not because we actually need to do them, but because we're too afraid to go out and do the big things. Because if we're not busy doing that, what will we do? Well, we'll have to go out and do the big stuff. We're going to have to go out and have those conversations. Oh, well, I've got nothing to do today, so I guess I better go out and sell. So we keep ourselves busy. It's part of that fear thing, that distraction. I think it was something that Christine Marie said, was that we create distraction. It protects us from having to face the big stuff, the stuff that is freaking us out. Because you know what? Oh man, I'm a designer, so I know I can lose myself for weeks and days in Canva and I work on Photoshop and whatnot, but it's so lovely in there. It's so safe. It's so lovely and pretty and safe. You don't have to grow. You don't have to stretch too much to do it. It's
And Christine Marie's right. And you guys, nobody knows the inner workings of the mind better than Christine Marie. So she's absolutely who to listen to about that. And she's 100% right. We distract ourselves it's a defense mechanism. It also keeps us from failing. Our mind wants to keep us from failing. And I've been listening to her and all the things that she says, and I've learned so darn much from her that, that's exactly what it is. And we didn't get into this to stay safe. If we wanted to stay safe, we would have stayed in our corporate jobs, right? So we just have to continually remind ourselves until it becomes second nature. And it's a journey, and you don't get there immediately. It's work.
So I want to delve back to your competitor review and the 90-minute cap. So, man, I wish I'd met you a long time ago. So I'm a control. We've all got multiple personality, aspects and strengths, but my two dominants are controller and analyzer. So when I first went in and took my coaching business online, I went and analyzed, I researched my competitors, and I researched what was out there and was available. And eventually, this is a story. My wife walked into my office one morning on a Tuesday morning, and I was sitting on the floor with my knees pulled up to my chest and my arms holding my knees, and I was sobbing. I was sobbing like a baby. And she's like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "I can't do this. I'm not successful enough. I'm not skinny enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not young enough, and whatever the case. I'm not cool enough. All these other coaches there." And she was like, "Okay." So I said, "So what's the problem?" I was like, "I can't do this. I can't show up. I can't do this." And she's like, "Oh, okay, don't." Because she's a pragmatist. And I was like, "Say what now?" She's like, "I can't do that. This work is important. Like, this is what I've set out to do. Like, I'm on a mission." She's like, "Well, then stop whining. I'll make some coffee, get back to your desk and get to it." But the point was I had let my research actually become a deep, dark rabbit hole.
Yep.
I had stopped researching, and I actually I had allowed it to become something that went, "Oh my God, look what they're doing. I hadn't thought of that." Or, "Wow, okay." So, so they're more adept, they're more this, they're more that, they're more anything that you could think to add more of. Competitor research is critical. As an entrepreneur, research has to be part of your journey for the lifetime of your career as an entrepreneur. But 90 minutes, I love that. God, you could have saved me 4 months of my life if I had met you.
So you are not alone though, Jay, because that's why I cap it at 90 minutes, because all you do, and you've heard it, people say, don't compare your beginning to someone else's, ending or middle. And that's what it is. Oh my gosh, look at all the things that she's got 12 courses. I don't have 12 courses. I'm not even a legit coach at this point, and we compare ourselves so harshly. But the fact is, yeah, competitive research is important, but you need to know specific things. So go in, get what you need, and get the hell out. And you have to be cautious and guard what you're exposing yourself to. We know who we are. We're achievement oriented people. Achievement oriented people freaking compare themselves to others. That's what we do. So don't allow yourself to have the trap. You're in there to get 5 pieces of information, get your 5 pieces, and then shut your computer off and go away. I've done the same thing, and it was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why would I even think that I could do this? Look at these people, they've got it all together, and I'm just a big fraud. And that's what that means they did a good job with their content. You want to have content that makes other people feel like frauds, so I totally feel you. I think we have all been there, and we just have to guard knowing who we are and what kind of habits we'll dive into. We just need to protect ourselves from ourselves and get the facts and get out.
Louisa, over to you.
Hey.
Oh, sorry, I think I unmuted you trying to unmute you. My bad.
Unmute.
There you go.
So valuable.
I'm so glad.
The content area is where I get shaky because I'm like, oh my God, education, writing, content is where I'm like, I'm an artist. I help people. I am this, and you simplified it, and it really was powerful. And then the other thing that I found when you guys are both sharing, or every powerful person I experience sharing, and when you share vulnerably, my experiences, but they've already come to the other side, so it's easy to hear because I'm like, oh, they're already wonderful. So when I share vulnerably, I think I experience, am I being judged, and are people looking at me like I'm not good enough? So I kind of wanted to share that out loud so it doesn't get stuck in my head of when I'm sharing it, is it being experienced as I'm saying I'm not good enough, or am I, because that's like a fear of sharing.
It is a fear. I think that you've kind of hit on a really important dichotomy. How impressed we are by vulnerability when it's coming from someone else versus, how we ourselves feel about being vulnerable and knowing, but if it's me, because I'm not there yet, then this vulnerability doesn't have the same value. I promise you that anyone else who is sharing vulnerably is not there yet either. They have hills that they haven't climbed yet, and that they don't feel like they're really at the top, and they're not, because they still have further to go. There's always this idea of vulnerability as, a tool for empathy rather than just sharing just to share. You're not trying to bootstrap connection, right? You're not trying to, I'm going to overshare with you, and thereby you are obligated to know me. That is, not how we're doing. But when it comes down to it, knowing your ideal client and knowing what they've been through, they can't trust you, especially with something like coaching, right? They can't trust you unless they know that you've been through it and are still going through it. There is the reason that women in particular don't reach out to coaches, life coaches, business coaches, parenting coaches, any coaches, is because they feel like they are going to be judged. They don't call financial advisors because they feel like they are going to be judged. I don't want them to know what bad shape my money is in. I'm not going to call a fitness coach because I don't want to have to admit that I have gained this much weight. That's all of it. How much easier is it to talk to a coach who says, I'm still struggling with this? This is something I've come a long way, with this idea of eliminating some of these limiting beliefs. But I'm not going to lie, every now and again, it still sneaks up and kicks me in the butt. And when it does, it surprises me. And I feel like it would be so easy to slip back into my old habits. Here's what I do when I'm feeling that. Like, there's nothing, I don't feel like I'm going to be judged by you, if you're sharing with me what you're going through. So I do think that level of vulnerability, but intentional vulnerability, and not just necessarily floodgate vulnerability, as I call it. Even if you're not 100% on the other side, share the journey as you go. because your ideal clients are going through the same thing, and they don't want to work with someone who doesn't get that, you know?
Yeah, Kate,
That
so
was
one of the things that I do, the sort of metering stick that I have for that, I don't know if that'll help you, Louisa, is Elizabeth Gilbert has a quote where she says, "You don't write from your open wounds, you write from your scars." So doesn't mean don't share as you're going through, but just don't, you don't need to be vulnerable in the moments that you are bleeding out, when you are dying. That is not the way, because you're actually you're going to undermine yourself, because you're going to look back on that and you're going to feel crap about it when you relook at it. Whereas, it's like if I'm mad at you, if I just take a day or two to compose myself, I'm able to articulate how I feel about what it was that made me mad. Well, the same thing, but when you're going through something and you need to be vulnerable, is just take a moment to articulate to yourself how you feel about all of this and think about it. So before you just go and, emotionally vomit on people's shoes, right? So just take a moment, just take a hot minute to think about it. But your mess is important. Remember, I said way earlier, I said, people don't actually relate to perfect. They just don't. Nikki Woods is coming on next, and she's a media strategist. This is a woman who understands the media. We think we need to be perfect for the media, and pretty sure she'll agree with me. I hope I'm not wrong. But the media don't even look for perfect. They look for scrappy. They want a real story of, mess that ends in triumph. They're not even looking for perfect. We tend to think the media amplifies what is perfect about us, but they're looking for content that is scrappy and messy, and they want a story. And your story is in that mess. Your story is in that vulnerability. Your story, no one cares about your accolades. No one cares about your achievements. No one cares about they care about the fact that you got scrappy, that you hurt, that you bleed when you're cut, and that you feel fear, and that you're doing it. You did it despite the odds. That is your power. Like that. Remember I said, that is actually the good stuff. You're lucky you got that stuff, because that is the stuff that will make you magnetic.
I think it's a really important.
Love it.
Yeah.
So one last thing I wanted to say, quickly, Kate, was something that you said about, you used, okay, first of all, I thought you said the thug factor, but it was the thud factor. Am I right?
Yeah, that bug.
Like, geez, I didn't know you were that kind of girl.
Yeah.
But anyway, but hopping over to that, I think it was Basuma, where you search down to see who is being picked up for that content and go and check their content out. And it's not about copying their content. So one of the things that I like to do is, by delving into other people's content, see what they're not hitting. See what you disagree with. See what you disagree with. See what gaps are there that you think, oh man, they could have mentioned this, and then go do that. Go see what point of view they're sharing that you think, nah, experience has taught me something different. Not that they're wrong, but you've had an experience where that didn't work for you, but you've got something that did. Because here's the thing, is that all strategies work. All diets work. They just don't work for everybody.
Right.
Business coaching is a good example. I mean, there's a gazillion business coaches out there. We all have certain foundational pieces, but businesses are as unique as the people who own them and who run them. So the business strategy that I share with my coaches are not the business strategies that I share with my innovative entrepreneurial startups that are the hard-nosed entrepreneurs that come at it with a business plan and venture capital that's been raised, and it's different. So your competitors are the same. They might be in your industry, because health is not a niche, it's an industry. Business coaching is not a niche, it's an industry. It's figure out what they're not doing that you do and that you care about. So that, looking at their content not to copy is great, because you're actually finding the gaps. Go in it looking for the gaps.
I think it's a really important point. And that's kind of one of I don't want to say it's not an old SEO trick, but it's a marvelous SEO tactic. Go look at what the best, most prominent article or piece on the topic is, and then make it better, and then write a better version of it. Essentially, like, oh, they're talking about it like this, but this really only appeals to this very specific audience. That's not my audience. How do I make this relevant to my audience? And yeah, that is I mean, we are constantly having to learn. And that is, again, that idea of use your competitors and what they're doing and not doing as leverage to fuel, to fuel your ideas. It's not to be, you're not there to measure up and to get even with them, to be exactly the same as they are. You're there to find out what gaps they have left and where you can exploit those opportunities.
Exactly. Mary Kate, you're amazing. Thank you. I learned so much, girl. I think we need to talk more.
Having me. This was such a great time. I love talking about content. So if I'm excited to see everybody else's presentations and chat with them a little bit.
Thank you. Thanks so much. All right, and we are right on. Oh my God, the timing of this one is amazing. I'm actually giving myself a gold star for the timing of it. Nikki Woods is in the house. Nikki makes me feel very unglamorous. I won't lie. She makes me feel very unglamorous. So like comparisonitis. I was like, I looked at your profile, your photo that we used for the media campaign. I was like, oh Lord, I've got nothing to put up, and I'd had surgery and my face was swollen, so I couldn't even take anything and try and filter the hell out of it to make it look glamorous. I was like, well, this is as good as it's gonna get. I made sure my photo was never too close to yours though.
You guys have been cracking me up. I love the whole thug theory. I was like, I'm so down with that.
All right, so I'm going to stop this.